The World Economic Forum touts itself as a platform through which nations and people can discuss economic issues and find solutions. In practice, however, its name lists the things its members seek to control. Mainly, they want to control the world, all economies, and all public forums. While the WEF does have members in all walks of life, there is a clear hierarchy and social goal that has nothing to do with the goals of true economics, which is the greatest good for the greatest number. Instead, they have the goal of the greatest good for themselves within the codified religious form of leftism that has swept the world's elites over the past 50 years. Many people who don't look into the WEF and its members and dismiss everything about them as conspiracy theories and don't realize that the lines about eating bugs and you being forced to own nothing and be happy about it are not air and bluster, but in fact actual goals published on the WEF's website. Eating bugs is an excellent example of how the WEF operates. They have decided that bugs are a less resource-intensive source of protein that creates less carbon, aka doesn't produce cow farts. Because of this, they have arbitrarily decided that everyone should switch to eating bugs for protein, but there are essentially no studies done on how this affects the human body. They point to bugs being a partial food supply to many cultures, and while this is true, it was never the entire protein supply, and the health effects of eating them was never studied. However, some studies have started to come out that eating bugs' exoskeleton could have health consequences, but they don't care about that. It was already decided that you should eat bugs, so they don't want those issues studied and actively suppress any studies that are done anyway. While we do currently eat crustaceans, we don't eat their shells, which are unavoidable when eating or grinding up bugs for protein powder. The attitude of, we have decided on the course, so it must happen and is now moral doctrine, can be seen in other recent events. Most notably, the global aggressive push to get everyone vaccinated during the COVID situation. Masks are another example. The CDC and all their media mouthpieces told everyone not to mask or go buy all the N95s because it wouldn't help. But they admitted later they thought it would help, but wanted all their people to be able to buy them first. Then, when the narrative changed, they demanded everyone mask and said it would prevent the disease. Then they said it would reduce it, then finally admitted it was useless. Unless it was a fully sealed N95, it wouldn't help at all. The same pattern happened with the vaccine. When Trump was in charge, liberals said they wouldn't trust it. Then, when Biden took over, the narrative switched, and it was demanded that you take it, despite the fact that it was literally an experimental drug that had skipped the vast majority of testing that every other vaccine had been put through. Later, the narrative was that ivermectin was a horse medicine because they didn't want people believing that there was an alternative treatment to the shot. Of course, ivermectin is used on horses and humans alike, like a huge number of drugs. But the reality was they didn't want people believing in something that wasn't from the state and mandated, and thought people would be less likely to take the shot if there was an alternative treatment. Doctors had their credentials pulled for prescribing it. They vilified it, suppressed it, and banned it, yet it was proven to be effective. So does this mean that the administration is responsible for everyone who died from COVID when they would have survived if they had access to the medicine they wanted? I say it does. The members of the World Economic Forum, like all fake economists, only care about aggregates. They preach that everyone else should live within an obscenely small carbon footprint, while they live extravagant lifestyles and fly around the world on private jets. They think that if they can force 1 million people to eat bugs instead of meat, then all those cows not farting will more than counterbalance their lifestyles of excess. In their minds, they aren't hypocrites, they are virtuous. This is because they don't view regular people as people. They view them as serfs at best and tools and burdens at worst. They also want you to give up your homes and live in pods with low electricity use and low waste, further reducing their carbon footprint through you. But what is better than forcing you to eat bugs, use less electricity, and live in the pod? What sinister plot could be worse than forcing you to live a life so horrible that drugging you up is the only way to keep you happy? Perhaps they want to get rid of the regular people altogether, or at least the vast majority of us, because the only thing that pollutes less than their pod people is no people. And that, my friends, is why the WEF and people like Bill Gates advocate for shockingly large reductions in population levels. At best, this means forcing billions of people to not reproduce. At worst, this means reducing the current population in a much more horrible fashion. But I digress. The fact is, the World Economic Forum has nothing to do with economics. The vast majority of their discussions and think tank papers are about how to force people into social compliance with their climate and ideological agendas. They only care about economics as a means to an end. The name World Economic Forum would make you think they are a think tank tackling issues such as hyperinflation and underdevelopment in the third world, but in reality, they are attacking social conservative and the ideological resistance of people in the first world. The WEF and their cronies love the third world, because their people are already living like serfs in many cases, and are very used to not having any actual political freedom, free speech, or ability to resist the government when making arbitrary and draconian decisions. They would love to see the populations of rich first world nations replaced by less developed nations who only resist when they literally starve to death. A year and a half ago, I wrote a book called Kleptonomics, which examines the habit of modern economists and politicians when they use the terminology of economics to paint their theft as if they were helping people. The World Economic Forum is the literal definition of kleptonomics. Their name itself wears the corpse of economics as a ghillie suit in an attempt to hide their true intentions. They obscure their nefarious intentions with a cloak of benevolence, all while gathering the world's rich and powerful into a club of elites who truly believe they are better than everyone else, that they deserve more than everyone else, and that you so thoroughly belong to them that they can reduce your carbon emissions and count it as virtue on their part. And so it becomes obvious that the woke tyranny of the WEF is the high priesthood of modern leftist ideology turned into a religion. Just like heretical megachurch pastors or priestkings from Mesoamerica, the priests of woke at the WEF demand your obedience and worship. They enforce a moral code counter to your best interest. They demand contributions in both wealth and lifestyle. And they refuse to live by any of their own tenets, because their own virtue comes from what they can force you to do, not what they must do themselves. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.